In the digital age, it takes just one person, one click to change the world.
Experts say that the I Love You virus could end up costing the world economy $10 billion in lost work time.
My understanding is that the Army and the Navy both shut down their email systems in the building, at least temporarily.
We've decided to shut down the system in order to make an assessment to understand what kind of effects this virus had on us. And for the most part of today, until this afternoon, our email system has been shut down.
In Manila, as the sun set on May 4th, 2000, a young man sat at his computer, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The choice he made next would trigger a chain reaction that would bring the digital world to its knees. Not with sophisticated technology, but with 3 simple words: I love you. Welcome to Pinoy Pulse. If you like what we're doing, please consider hitting the like button, click on the bell icon, and subscribe. Let's get started. The late 1990s marked a peculiar time in human history. The internet was transforming from a luxury into a necessity, but access remained a privilege of the few. Nowhere was this digital divide more apparent than in the Philippines, where a month of internet access could cost more than many families earned in a week. In cramped internet cafes across Manila, students would pool their money for precious minutes of connectivity, watching the timer tick down as they rushed to complete their assignments. Among these students was Onel de Guzman, an undergraduate completing his studies at AMA Computer College, whose relationship with technology was about to take an unexpected turn. Unlike his peers who saw the internet's barriers as immutable facts of life, de Guzman saw them as a challenge to overcome. He spent countless hours in these cafes, not just using the internet, but understanding it, dissecting it, seeing both its power and its vulnerabilities. But de Guzman wasn't content with just understanding the system. He wanted to change it. Where others saw security measures, he saw walls that kept knowledge from those who needed it most. His vision was radical for its time. If the internet was truly meant to connect humanity, shouldn't everyone have access to it? In the fluorescent-lit halls of AMA Computer College, Dean Alan Caparros stared at the thesis proposal before him in disbelief. De Guzman had boldly titled it Email Password Sender Trojan, proposing software that would silently retrieve internet account logins from computers across Manila. In his thesis, he argued that people who paid for expensive internet accounts often only used a few hours of their service. His software would simply borrow their unused time, redistributing access to those who couldn't afford it. This program is the main solution, he wrote, to help the people to use the internet to get information. The document wasn't just a technical proposal. It was a manifesto that challenged the very foundations of digital ownership. The faculty's response echoed through the department. This is illegal. We do not produce burglars. But where his professors saw criminal intent, de Guzman saw social revolution. He argued that the original password owners would suffer no loss of service. They'd still have their full access, just shared with others who needed it. When he gathered his belongings and walked out of the college that final time, he wasn't just leaving with a rejected thesis. He was departing with a conviction that would soon reshape the digital landscape. At a time when Windows operating systems dominated both business and personal computing, Microsoft had just made a seemingly innocent change to their brand new Windows 2000. For the first time, file extensions would be hidden by default, a feature that could be manually enabled in older versions like Windows 95 and 98, but was now standard. While meant to improve user experience, this change created a perfect opportunity for deception. De Guzman recognized this vulnerability. When a malicious Visual Basic script file arrived in an inbox with a .txt extension, users would only see the harmless text file portion, masking its true nature as an executable script. While the virus would primarily devastate Windows 2000 users, even those running older Windows versions weren't safe. Anyone who had manually hidden their file extensions could fall victim to the attack. In his small apartment, surrounded by borrowed computer parts and empty coffee cups, de Guzman began collecting pieces of malicious code from across the internet, weaving them together like a digital tapestry. His choice of Visual Basic script was deliberate. It came built into Windows systems, could execute code simply by being opened, and most importantly, its source code remained accessible and modifiable. This last feature would prove crucial, enabling others to create countless variants of his work. The virus's coding was deceptively simple. Once activated, it would create multiple copies of itself, some hiding in system directories. The first files sent were mskernel32.vbs and win32dll.vbs, masquerading as legitimate Windows files. The genius and the tragedy of what de Guzman created lay in its multi-layered design. At its heart was winbugsfix.e.xe, the password stealer from his original thesis. But to ensure its survival and spread, the virus would burrow deep into infected systems. It created copies of itself in critical system directories and modified Windows registry keys. More destructively, it began overwriting various types of files. Documents, scripts, and images were replaced with copies of the virus, while music files were hidden away. Though de Guzman later claimed this wholesale digital destruction wasn't his intent, his creation had evolved far beyond its original purpose of borrowing internet access. The virus was now wrapped in a self-replicating worm that would raid email contact lists, spreading itself exponentially. What happened next would demonstrate one of technology's most profound truths. The distance between idealism and chaos is often shorter than we imagine. In Manila's chat rooms, de Guzman would strike up casual conversations with strangers before sending them his virus disguised as personal photos. Each time someone clicked, his password-stealing code would quietly do its work, harvesting their passwords, scanning their contact lists, and silently spreading itself to new victims. The recipients never noticed their information had been compromised, their email addresses harvested, their own computers turned into launching pads for the next wave of infections. These early successes proved his concept. People would readily trust and click on files from someone they just met online. Even more valuable than the stolen passwords was the knowledge he gained about human trust and digital vulnerability. But de Guzman had greater ambitions. His experiments in Manila's chat rooms had taught him something crucial about human psychology. People were drawn to personal connection. If they would click on a stranger's photo, what would they do for something even more intimate? For his next move, he would tap into humanity's most universal desire. Instead of his earlier photo bait, he chose something far more irresistible: a love letter. The virus would now arrive as loveletterforyou.txt.vbs, carrying a simple message that would prove impossible to resist. Kindly check the attached love letter coming from me. His initial tests in Manila proved the concept worked perfectly. The promise of love was far more effective than any photo could ever be. Encouraged by this success and driven by curiosity, de Guzman made a fateful decision. His original code had been designed to operate only within Manila, but now he wondered, if it worked so well locally, what else might be possible? That May evening, he removed the geographic restrictions from his code, unleashing his creation upon the wider world. Like a digital butterfly effect, that decision would change the course of internet history forever. In the early hours of May 4th, 2000, as Hong Kong's financial district hummed to life, the first warnings began to surface. A simple love letter was spreading from computer to computer, inbox to inbox, continent to continent. By sunset, the most devastating computer virus in history would hold the digital world hostage. No one could have predicted how quickly it would spread. Following the sun westward, like a digital butterfly effect, the virus swept from Hong Kong to Europe, and then to the United States as each region's workday began. Every opened email, every clicked attachment multiplied the infection, turning trusted colleagues into unwitting accomplices in what would become the most widespread cyber attack in history. What happened next was unlike anything the digital world had seen. Previous viruses had spread through networks like prudent invaders, infecting dozens, perhaps hundreds of computers. ILOVEYOU moved like a tsunami. It didn't just infect networks, it overwhelmed them. Each infected computer became a new launcher, sending copies to every contact it could find. The spread of the virus soon grew exponentially. Picture the scene in London, the House of Commons, the heart of British democracy, grinding to a halt as love letters flooded its servers. In Washington, Pentagon officials watching helplessly as the virus breached their defenses, not with sophisticated cyber weapons, but with a simple promise of affection. At NASA, scientists realizing that irreplaceable research data was vanishing, replaced by copies of a love letter that was anything but loving. The virus walked through corporate firewalls like they were paper. Ford Motor Company, a titan of industry that had survived the Great Depression and 2 world wars, found itself paralyzed by a piece of code written in a Manila apartment. American Telephone and Telegraph, which had built much of America's communications infrastructure, couldn't keep its own communication systems online. But the true devastation wasn't in the institutions. It was in the chaos that cascaded through human networks. Every person who opened the attachment trusted its sender. Every new infection betrayed that trust, turning friends into unwitting accomplices. Within 10 days, the numbers were staggering. 50 million infections, 10% of all internet-connected computers worldwide affected. The financial damage would eventually reach $10 billion. As the world reeled from the attack, attention turned to finding its creator. The trail led investigators to a small ISP in Manila called Sky Internet, which had been flooded with complaints from European computer users. Through careful investigation, they traced the virus to a cramped apartment in the Pandacan neighborhood. There, in the same city where students still pooled their money for internet access, sat the humble origin point of a virus that had brought the digital world to its knees. Back in Manila, as investigators closed in, De Guzman faced a reality far different from his idealistic vision. His experiment in digital equality had evolved into something he never intended. The virus that was meant to liberate had instead demonstrated how vulnerable our connected world had become. The legal aftermath proved as complex as the virus itself. The Philippines had no laws against creating malware. How could they? They were trying to prosecute a crime that hadn't existed when it was committed. His final public appearance was at a press conference where he wore dark sunglasses, covered his mouth with a handkerchief, and would only say, "It is possible," when asked if he created the virus. By the time new legislation passed, De Guzman had vanished into Manila's sprawling metropolis. For 20 years, the creator of ILOVEYOU remained a ghost in the digital machine. When a journalist finally found him in 2020, he wasn't living in luxury or working for a tech giant. Instead, he was repairing mobile phones in a small shop, still working with technology, but on a much more human scale. The irony wasn't lost on those who understood the story's full circle. The man who had once reached through screens to connect with millions was now connecting with people one broken phone at a time. The legacy of the ILOVEYOU virus is complex, a blend of unintended consequences and profound lessons. It wasn't just a piece of malicious code, it was a mirror reflecting our deepest vulnerabilities, not in our machines, but in ourselves. It showed how a simple message could exploit our innate desires for connection, affection, and belonging. In an age where technology races ahead, often outpacing our understanding of its impact, the story of ILOVEYOU is a testament to the dual-edged nature of innovation. It reminds us that every click, every interaction is a bridge between human intent and technological action. The virus didn't just infiltrate computers, it wove itself into the fabric of human relationships, exploiting trust in ways we had never anticipated. As we navigate the ever-evolving digital landscape, the tale of the ILOVEYOU virus stands as a profound example of how technology can both unite and divide. It challenges us to reflect on the responsibilities that come with creation and connection. Because in the end, the most powerful forces aren't the ones we build with code or circuits. They're the timeless human emotions that can inspire both our greatest achievements and our most profound mistakes. Thank you for joining us on Pinoy Pulse. Remember to stay informed, stay vigilant, and continue asking the hard questions. Until next time, this is Pinoy Pulse, your source for in-depth stories that matter.